everyone, to the Progressive Gentleman Podcast. We are your hosts, Matt and Dan, and thanks as always for the support and for taking the time to listen to us nerd out about music. This episode is the next in our Djeneral transmission series. In these episodes, we talk about what's going on recently in the world of heavy and progressive music, things like recent news, new music, new tours, as well as what we've been listening to lately. So, without further ado, Matt, what have you been jamming lately?
For me, it's been mostly the new Monuments record in Stasis.
Yep.
Yeah, I've been listening to that. I listened to it a couple times yesterday, and then once again this morning. I think I probably listened to it 3 or 4 times through, and I'm really digging it. It's definitely a strong contender for album of the year, I think, so far. So that's
Yeah.
been my main thing that I've been listening to lately. Also, some of the Cara Cara and Delta Sleep, which we went and saw their show a couple weeks ago.
Yep.
Um, so I've been listening to their stuff, just kind of as the aftermath of the hype from the show.
For
So,
sure. For sure.
what about you?
Same with the Monument stuff. In particular, the single that they released, Cardinal Red, but that whole record is pretty fantastic. So, I mean, we'll talk about that a little later, but yeah, that record is great. I've also been listening to Hagen's Affinity record a lot.
Ooh,
I'm a big fan of Hagen, and I'm hoping that they release another full length this year. I know they've been teasing. They've been teasing a single and they've been teasing new music, so I'm hoping we get a full length. Also, Silent Planet, mostly The Night God Slept and Everything Was Sound. I'm a big fan of the song Panic Room. I'm a
oh yeah, it's such a
big
good
fan of
song.
the song Native Blood. Depths too is also really great. Everything that that band puts out, and Garrett Russell is one of my favorite people in metal, so big fan of that. And then also we have a playlist out there. We linked it a little bit on our social media, but the Progressive Gentleman Essentials playlist on Spotify. Definitely look it up, give it a like. A lot of great songs on that. So typically when I'm driving around, I put that on shuffle. So
Yeah, it's also for. I mean, we kind of talked in our first episode about our like origins and
right.
stuff, but that's kind of a snapshot of you can just listen to all of our favorite jams. So yeah, definitely check it out if you're curious to discover more, or if you just kind of want to get a feel for our musical tastes a little more than what we talked about in our first episode.
For sure, yeah. There's a lot of, like classic prog songs, stuff off of Tesseract's Altered State, stuff off
Oh,
of
so good.
August Burns Red's early records, like, Mariana's Trench is such a great song that's on there. There's just a lot of great old songs, but also we mix in some of the new stuff too. I know I put some of the new Monument songs on there. I know I've put some of the new Animals as Leaders songs on there. So we try to keep it up to date as well, and it's cool that you can go from a song by Delta Sleep to a song by The Contortionist to a song by Haken. It's a cool, definitely a cool playlist to put on shuffle. You never know what you're gonna get.
Life is like a box of chocolates.
Absolutely. So that's basically what we've been listening to lately. So let's jump right into the news. We're gonna start with a couple sad ones. I feel like that's been our thing on these episodes, but
Yeah, it's unfortunate that there's been so much sad news, and definitely would prefer to have happier news. But I feel like starting off with is probably kind of like rip off the band-aid and then move on to happier subjects to round it out.
yeah, absolutely. And definitely going to start off talking about Taylor Hawkins, Foo Fighters drummer. He died in South America while they were on tour. Extremely surprising, sad news. I mean, I remember reading that for the first time and just being in shock. I mean, the Foo Fighters, I think for most people who listen to heavy music, I mean, everybody seems to have a respect for them, myself included, obviously. So,
Yeah,
uh,
I couldn't believe actually Colleen told me that she had seen it on social media, and I hadn't been on social media much that day to see any of it, and she told me, and I was it's like, what? And I was like, for a second, it was like, you've got to be joking. But then it was like, why would you joke about that? And what, like,
right.
so it just, I think my brain went through like a bunch of different emotions all at once. Like,
Yeah.
holy shit.
And I know, I mean, my wife Stephanie, that's one of her favorite bands of all time. I even bought her tickets for their upcoming tour.
Yeah.
So that it's just real sad. I personally have never got to see them live. So I was kind of looking forward to that. Again, it's not necessarily heavy music per se or progressive music for that matter. But that's big news in the world of rock music, and pretty much everybody respects the hell out of Dave Grohl and just everything that that band does and has done
Yeah.
for just rock music in general. So that's a really really big loss. And just to pepper this in too, he played drums on the No World for Tomorrow record by Coheed and Cambria
Yeah.
as well. He really helped, and that's a big band for me. So he really helped them kind of through a tough time in there, and that they even came out and stated that if it wasn't for him bridging that gap, who knows where they would be today. So
Yeah, I saw that in the like Children of the Fence Facebook group.
right,
A lot of people were posting that they were listening to that album in honor of him and posting stuff. So
yeah,
it was nice to see everyone like supportive, and even like when they posted that they're not doing they were supposed to perform for some award show.
I think it. Yeah,
Was it the
I was gonna say it
Grammys?
might have even been the Grammys. I'm not sure. I know they'd also just released a film, and then there was also like a
Yeah.
soundtrack with that film. More music there, and it's kind of heavy actually. I don't know if
Yeah, it
you
was
listened to it.
yeah, it was the I haven't listened to the whole thing, but I listened to the single that they put out before the movie came out. And yeah, I've read that they were putting out like a I don't know if it's technically all this way, but that song was very like thrashy
Yeah, yeah.
kind of sound to it.
So
And
just really really sad. And he's definitely gonna be missed.
yeah.
And hopefully, you know, the Foo Fighters will be able to move on. And obviously that's not something that I'm sure they're thinking about right now. They're mourning the loss of a brother essentially. So I'm hoping that those guys are okay. The thoughts go out to all of those guys, and Taylor's family as well. And it's definitely tough.
Yeah, it was good to see that people like in the comments and stuff where I didn't see anyone being like, "Oh, like you need to tour" and stuff. It seemed like when they announced that they weren't doing it, that everybody's like, "Take the time you need to heal and mourn the loss and stuff." And so it was nice to see like the outpour of support for them and stuff. And definitely like from us is that if they got to take their time, and it's understandable, and it's definitely a huge loss.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and you think about Dave Grohl had to mourn the loss. Pat Smear as well. I mean, they both were in Nirvana, and
Yeah.
this is the second time they have to mourn the loss of such an important band member, brother. It's
Yeah, it's definitely can't be easy.
yeah. So our hearts go out to those guys, and hopefully they get the mourning in that they need, and can move forward,
Yeah.
not just as a band and as musicians, but just as people as well. But
Yeah.
unfortunately, we're going to be transitioning to another pretty sad loss. I had mentioned in a previous episode I had finally been exploring the catalog of Dance Gavin Dance. That's a band that I had not been able to get into very much previously, but they announced that they were touring with Coheed and Cambria. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to just do the deep dive. I'm going to listen to the whole discography. And I did that and was pretty excited, and pretty excited if it still happens for that tour. But they just announced that their bass player, Tim Furyk, died as well recently. So that's another extremely sad loss for a band that has a lot of respect in the metal, progressive metal community. So
Yeah, it was just like when the news came out, I just pretty much my whole Instagram feed was like the bands that I follow all like posting stuff and commenting on the Dance Gavin Dance posts and stuff. So it was again good to see like all the support and stuff for kind of one of the prolific bassists in the scene. I feel like Dance Gavin Dance is a very well respected and known band in the prog and metalcore scene. So
absolutely.
it's sad to hear another story of a band member that passed away.
Yeah, another major loss in the scene, in the, rock, metal, heavy music scene. So, our thoughts go out to them as well. It's never easy to lose a friend, and hopefully, again, those guys are able to heal and move forward as musicians, as people. So hopefully, those guys will be able to be all right. And again, our thoughts, our hearts go out to those guys.
Yeah, definitely.
But we can transition now to a little bit happier news here, a little bit different news. So, prog music was represented at the Grammys this year.
Yeah, that's maybe not a first, but it's definitely not a common occurrence. So it
Right,
was kind
and
of nice to see.
yeah, they had, I guess, I mean, I would consider Deftones prog-ish in some of their stuff. Gojira as well, Mastodon as well. So,
Yeah.
the Grammy for Best Metal Performance went to Dream Theater this year, and those other bands I just mentioned were also on the list of nominees. So that's pretty cool to see. And I know the member of Dream Theater who accepted the award did mention, it's great to see prog music continuing to grow, and it's cool that we can write 13-minute songs and still be on this stage. So,
Yeah.
that was definitely cool to see. The music that we talk about, that we listen to, that we enjoy, represented on such a major stage.
Yeah, I was when I saw the list of nominees, it was just like, wow, this is actually like a pretty decent list. And I know some people were kind of like shitting on the fact that Dream Theater won and stuff, which I mean, for me, like I know as a prog fan, this is probably like blasphemous, but like Dream Theater has never been a huge band that I listen to like all the time. Not that I hate them or anything, but they're just not like one of my favorites. But seeing them win was pretty awesome. But then seeing Gojira and Mastodon on there was like, those are two of my favorite bands, and they're
Yeah.
actually like performing and nominated for best metal performance. It actually felt like finally the Grammys are like actually understand what metal is a
Yeah,
little bit.
and Between the Bear to Me was nominated at one point as well. I think
Yeah.
that was what, last year, 2 years ago, whenever Automata came out. Is that right? For like Millions, maybe, or for
I forget what song they played, but yeah, it was
yeah,
a couple years
it was one
ago.
of those. But that was always cool to see. I mean, most of the time, the best metal performance, nominations go to acts like Poppy, who I know a lot of people like Poppy for some ironic reason. I don't get it, but that's, to each their own. But
Yeah,
you see bands, quote unquote, like that who get nominated. Your Slipknots, your Korn, things like, bands that are more popular. Five
yeah.
Finger Death Punch, bands that, real metalheads look at like, you know.
Yeah,
But
it's like it's honestly ends up being more of like a extension of the best rock performance a lot of the time.
yeah,
It's like
yeah.
they don't really fully grasp what metal is and the different like nuances of the subgenres and stuff. Whereas like really they should probably have like best thrash metal, best progressive metal, like
They should just then get their own award show at that point. There's
yeah,
too
I
many
know.
subgenres,
Yeah,
but
I know they wouldn't be
I mean,
able to
and
do
there
it.
are prog awards. I know, like, Prog Magazine does awards where there's an actual award show and stuff like that, and they do like best album art, you know, best song, best album, best new band, whatever. So there are shows, sort of, you know, awards or whatever for these subgenres and for progressive music. But it's cool to see, progressive bands on a mainstream award show, winning awards. So it's
Yeah.
good. And that list, I mean, Rob Zombie was also on the list. So just to throw that out there as well. That list was a lot better, in my opinion, than past, best metal performance lists, minus the time when Between the Buried and Me was there, because
Yeah.
that was cool to see.
Well, there was also August Burns Red one year too. I
Oh yeah,
remember. So like they have some good bands, but then they almost never win. That it's
yeah.
like they almost do it to like appease the the metal fans. They're like, yeah, we hear you. Here's a
We
band.
at
They're
least
not
put
gonna
one.
win, but we at least put them on there for you, and
Yeah,
stuff.
and
So
Dream
seeing
Theater, honestly, Dream Theater winning. If anybody I talk to who doesn't necessarily listen to progressive music or necessarily know what progressive music is, for example, I was talking to a coworker the other day, actually, And I mentioned that we do a progressive music podcast, progressive metal podcast. He's like, oh, bands like Dream Theater. So I mean, like they are sort of, for people who don't know necessarily,
Yeah.
progressive music, they're kind of the face of progressive music for outsiders, I think.
Yeah, I do. I feel like they're definitely one of the like prolific bands in the progressive music scene that, anyone that kind of has friends who are metalheads, they probably have heard of Dream Theater or something. So it's good to see that, Prague was represented for sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So moving on to the next piece of news here, Brand of Sacrifice and We Came as Romans are teasing a collab track. So I don't actually know much about this. So I think you put this one on here.
Yeah.
Tell me and everyone about this.
Well, yeah, so I guess I think it was We Came as Romans that had posted on their Instagram that I forget what track it was, but they posted it's like, oh, it's this track but heavier, and then it said like underneath it was Brand of Sacrifice X We Came as Romans. So I thought that was a very like unique collaboration because they're very different bands. Like,
Yeah, I remember my whole like high school slash early college, music experience absolutely hating We Came as Romans, and I don't think I've ever listened to anything by them since. So it's interesting. Yeah, that's an interesting mix. Is it a collab or are they covering a song?
From the context that it was just like the tease, and I just kind of briefly read it last night actually, that it sounds like they're doing like redoing a track, but then they're collaborating on
Oh,
the
okay.
redo of the track.
Well, that's cool.
From what I gathered, when I saw that it was Brand of Sacrifice and We Came as Romans crossover, I was like, I've got to talk about this. This is a unique and potentially a pretty cool
Could be,
crossover.
yeah. Anything mixed like that has potential. But yeah, I guess we'll see. We'll see how that goes. And so this next piece of news that you also put on here that I
Yeah.
didn't see, which I would be very interested in, Tosin Abasi, the guitar god himself, has been flirting with the idea of doing a blues record. I would absolutely buy this record. Blues, jazz would be really cool to see him do something like that. I mean, they sort of incorporate this into their music, Animals as Leaders, now. I would love to see just like a pure blues or jazz record come from him. That would be awesome.
Yeah, whenever I was on just looking at the world of metal news last night and just kind of checking to see if I've missed anything recently, and I had these two pieces of weird news that I thought were pretty cool and worth talking about. I mean, Tosin is just a next level guitarist, so like I have no doubt that he would be able to make a blues record and take blues and what of blues and kind of add some of that Animals as Leaders elements to it and do something cool with it. Yeah, the article I just kind of briefly read over it. It sounded like he has been taking blues lessons and like learning more blues stuff. And with a recent interview, he said he had been flirting with the idea of it. It sounds like it's very like not definitely happening, but he just expressed that there was at least some interest there. So definitely something to keep an eye out for.
Yeah.
See if that pops onto Spotify. Surprisingly,
That would be really cool. And I mean, he's classically trained. He's got a music degree. So I'm pretty sure he could accomplish just about anything he set his mind to in music. So I definitely would keep an eye out for that.
yeah,
So switching up here, so some new singles that have been released since the last time we talked. We don't have too many on this list because a lot of the singles that were released now we have full records for, and also if we talked about every single that got released, we'd be here
yeah,
forever. So the first one that I wanted to talk about, a band that I really enjoy called Astronoid. They released a new single called Eyes. They're actually announced a new record as well. I don't remember the name of the record. I apologize, but it's being released on Three Dot Records, which is
Yeah,
pretty cool. So Periphery's label is, has signed and is releasing Astronoid's new record. So I'm
that's
excited to see how
exciting.
that turns out. I'm curious if we're gonna get like a Misha or a Spencer feature somewhere in there. But
That would be really cool to have Spencer featured vocalists like with I feel like their vocal styles would lend well to each other. So just
yeah,
having him pop in for like a verse or something would be
yeah.
pretty cool. And then
Uh,
Misha just put him in everything.
For sure, for sure. Astronoid's very unique in the sense of they use like this weird filter on their vocal. I saw them live with Coheed and the Contortionist, which is a really cool show. Probably one of my favorite lineups. And yeah, I mean, even live, they have this filter on the mic. It actually died at one point.
Oh really? That'd
Yeah,
have been
so
weird.
which was real strange. So it died at one point, and they had to like they stopped the show temporarily to like try to fix it because I think he heavily relies on that filter. Maybe I don't know. I mean, he did do some of the song without it. It sounded fine. I don't. I just think it's maybe their sound.
Yeah.
And it
What
does lend to the music as well because it's their sound for sure. It's what makes them unique, and I genuinely do enjoy it. I don't normally like a lot of weird stuff, like weird filters and effects and stuff like that.
I feel like it's not to the point where it hits you in the face like over processed. It just kind of adds like a certain I don't know, something like a flair to it, but it's not
Yeah,
like so much that it feels like overly processed. I don't know. I was actually just listening to this single like I don't know a couple days ago. I had been meaning to check it out, and then it kind of kept falling off of my radar. And then it's like, oh, we're about to record an episode. I definitely need to check it out and be able to like talk to it. And yeah, I like their sound a lot. They do when you said they toured with Coheed, they give me a lot of Coheed flavor
yeah,
to
like
their music,
a
but
heavier
yeah.
Coheed, yeah, for sure. Not That's not it's not a 1-to-1. They're not a heavier Coheed, but some of their songs, you can get Coheed vibes for sure.
Yeah, I think it's mostly from the vocals being like a higher register. It's like
Yeah,
kind of Claudio adjacent vocals, but
sure.
the instrumentation sounds definitely different and has their
Yeah,
own thing
it's
going
got the
on. But
heavy stuff, it's got the heavy flavor, some of the prog rock flavor at
yeah,
times. Like it's a good mix of all of that.
I really like their artwork for this
The
single.
artwork
Like
is
I don't know if
cool,
that'll be the
yeah.
same as their album because I know sometimes bands will get like Monuments did. Like they did different artwork for each of the singles they drop. Um, so I don't know if this will actually be like the final artwork, but it's really cool looking.
It is cool. Yeah, I'm really excited for the new record here. Dream and Lines was really good. I'm definitely expecting this record to end up on my end of year list. Uh, and I guess we'll see kind of how it shakes out. I think I'm more energized by the fact that Three Dot Records is involved, Misha's involved somehow. So like I mean
Yeah, that's
he's
pretty
such a
awesome.
great producer. I know I've talked about this before, but there's a band called Being that's out there that released a record that you could tell how like raw it was when they released it, and then Misha got involved on a song. Maybe on a whole record. Maybe he redid their whole record. I don't remember, but the difference was incredible. So I have a lot of hope for this record, and definitely check out the single "Eyes" by Astronoid if you've not checked it out. But moving on to the next one, you want to talk about this one?
Yeah, so Charlie Griffiths, the Haken guitarist, has his own side project, just named Charlie Griffiths, uh, and he had a song Arctic Cemetery that they just put out recently, and it features Tommy Rogers from Between the Buried and Me. I just listened to it like late last night when I was doing my deep dive with the world of metal, and I didn't know he had a side project. Um, but yeah, he has a full album coming out in June. I doesn't appear as though Tommy Rogers is going to be like the vocalist on all of them. I think it was just like a feature. But yeah, it's a long song and it seems like very extended universe BT Bam, so I'm all about it.
Yeah, it sounds like a Between the Buried and Me song. I mean, honestly, Haken gets compared to Between the Buried and Me a lot, and if it wasn't for the vocals in Haken, I mean, the instrumentals from Haken's music are really, really like, you get Between the Buried and Me vibes. So,
Yeah.
and that's not a shot at Haken's vocals because I love Haken. So, just want to make that clear. I did say earlier I was listening to Haken's Affinity record pretty frequently recently. So, um, but yeah, it's cool to see sort of two bands that are so high up on my list, collaborate in some way.
Yeah, that's when I saw it. I sent it to you, and I was like, if you hadn't heard this, is like this is all you. So that's why I sent
Yeah,
it
I
over.
follow a lot of those guys on social media, and I saw them teasing like videos of Tommy in the studio and stuff like that. So I was uh, I was definitely excited to see that and to hear this song too. It turned out really good, and definitely check that out if you've not yet.
It's crazy that we may potentially get a Haken album this year, and then also, Haken side project album this year too. So
Right.
that's a lot of Haken sound all coming out at once.
Yeah,
So
for
that's pretty
sure.
exciting.
For sure. I really hope we get that Haken record before the end of the year. It's possible it goes into next year, but
Yeah.
I would love to, there's so much good music already kind of on the docket this year that uh just keep adding to it. Just
Yeah, I
keep
just
piling it on.
I know I after last year and all the good albums that came out, it's just like, oh, I don't know how next year could compare. And I mean, it's only April, and so far I've got like 3 or 4 albums that I'm like gonna have to seriously listen to several times through to determine which one I like the best. They're all competing for my top spots, so and then we still have the remainder of the year left, and who knows what else will come out. So it's exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. So switching gears again. Uh so there's a band called Novelists. They go by Novelists FR. That were really, really high on my list. I think maybe 2018 they released a record that ended up being my album of the year that year. Because I just genuinely enjoyed everything. Aaron Marshall was featured on one of their songs on that record. And I think it was called C'est La Vie. It was actually 2020. Wow, that wasn't that long ago. I thought it was longer ago. Anyways, that was my album of the year in 2020. I really, really enjoy that record, C'est La Vie by Novelists
That
FR.
was a good
If you've not
good
heard
record.
anything on that record or that record at all, definitely check that out. But um, after they released that record, they parted ways with their singer, who was probably the reason why I really enjoyed that record. They got a new singer. I think his name's Tobias. He was in a band called Alaska. And I don't vibe as much with him, but they've released a couple singles and it's been hit or miss. They just released a new single called. They released a song called Terrorist with him. Oh, Smoke Signals is the most recent one. So,
I don't think I've listened to this one yet. I have seen a couple of their singles, and I was the
yeah,
same way. There was like kind of a lukewarm
it just.
reception for me. It was just like, oh, it's pretty. They got
They're
some cool stuff here, but the vocals I don't vibe with as much.
they went from sort of having their own sound with their old singer. I think his name was Mateo. He's in a new band called Salem, by the way, which is worth checking out. But
Yeah, it's is it
I
SAL3M?
believe so.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. But and some of that stuff has like old novelist vibes, probably because of the singer. But it's still not the same for me. But with the new singer, they've kind of taken on a new sound similar to like North Lane era, but slightly more, more towards the North Lane side of like the more overproduced, like their Alien record, which I'm not a fan of. Um, so this single, Smoke Signals, is is kind of, it's in the middle. Like I still vibe with parts of it I don't vibe with, but still worth checking out. And they're coming out with a new record soon. So I'll definitely be checking that out to see kind of how the first full record is with this new lineup. So definitely worth checking out if you've not checked it out. Definitely check out C'est La Vie, the record, if you've not heard of Novelists at all, because that is genuinely a masterpiece in my opinion. I really, really like that record.
Yeah, it is a good one. I don't think it made my album of the year, but it was. I definitely listened to it, and I still listen to it like from time to time. I mean, with all the good stuff that we have coming out all the time, I tend to listen to more of the like what's new stuff. But I do go back and listen to that album again from time to
Yeah.
time.
I just really vibe with the title track. It's short-ish, and it's very soft and slow for the most part, but I don't know why I really vibe with that song. So, uh, and Head Rush is a really good song on that record. Same with Human Condition, which is the track that features Aaron Marshall. So definitely check all that out if you've not already. But moving on, let's talk about some full album releases. We've had three pretty major records drop since the last time we talked. So
Yeah, I think we talked about one already.
did we?
With just very briefly,
Oh, okay.
monuments in
Oh,
stasis. Just
today.
from
Yeah,
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 yeah.
yeah. I thought you meant on a previous episode. I
Oh
was like,
no,
I don't
no.
think so.
Yeah, no, just we were talking about the monuments one earlier since we've both
Yeah,
been listening
right.
to it. That's yeah, it's that one is a very strong contender for album of the year. I've listened to it probably the most in a short period of time compared to
Yeah.
any other albums. Like, Fit for an Autopsy is still probably my most listened to like number of times through, but just in a 24-hour period, I've listened to this album 4 times. So it's definitely worth checking out. Yeah, they don't have a bad track on this.
Yeah, everything's pretty great. I've been listening to it in the car. That's been my like driving soundtrack recently.
Going fast.
Uh, and I mean, Cardinal Red was one of the singles that they put out, and pretty consistently, that's been, in my opinion, the best song released to date this year. But then the closing track on this record, called the Cimmerian, I think that's how it would be pronounced.
Yeah, I
Is
wasn't sure because
just
it's Sumerian like
yeah,
the record label, but it's spelled Cimm.
right,
So
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
not sure if
yeah.
it's Kimmerian or Cimmerian.
Yeah, but regardless, it's an 8 minute long song, and it's the tempo changes, the feel of the song the whole way through. The flow is just awesome. It's probably my favorite song on the record. I think it beats out Cardinal Red for me.
Whew.
And there are other really good songs on this record as well. There's one featuring Spencer from
Yeah.
Periphery, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, I like that track too. But I think for me, Cardinal Red is probably still my favorite. The Cimmerian is probably a close second. And then that Spencer one, just because, like I've said before, anything that the guys from Periphery put out, I'm on board for. So with them being featured.
Yeah, right now this is my album of the year. Obviously it's early, but right now that's where this is at. I honestly thought Meshuggah was gonna hold that pretty consistently, and honestly, after some more listens, maybe it'll flip. I don't know, but um, I just really vibe with this record. This is kind of this is the type of progressive metal that I enjoy personally. So it was really cool to see that the whole record sort of lived up to the expectations that the singles kind of laid out for us. So, yeah. So honestly, we'll see where it lands. But since I mentioned Meshuggah,
Yeah.
their full record just dropped as well.
Immutable.
Yes, it is heavy. Obviously that is kind of Meshuggah's thing, but it is heavy. It is genty. Since they invented that, I kind of expected that as well. And honestly, every song is pretty consistently good. I I really did think that it was probably going to be, a top three record at the end of the year. Right now, it's still holding ground there for me. But I don't know, what was the highlight for you.
Yeah, I think like you said, the whole album is pretty awesome. I think some of my favorites were Kaleidoscope, and I enjoyed Ligature Marks. Um, and then, man, it's Like just looking at this track list, it's like I just want to name all of them.
Yeah, I
They
think
are,
Kaleidoscope was my favorite track.
yeah,
I marked that one on my Spotify list here. That was definitely my favorite track. The singles that they released were so good too. I mean, the Abysmal Eye and with that video too. I mean, everything about that is really cool. So yeah, I mean, it's consistent, it's heavy, it's Meshuggah. We expected it, so definitely cool that again another record living up sort of to the expectations that were put out, by how great the singles were. So definitely a contender. Like I said, sometimes I'll have like for example last year. I really felt like Era was going to end up on top for me, but it was released so early and other records grew on me, and Era still ended up in my top 10. But I mean,
yeah. I The Meshuggah one, I was wondering, like before it came out, I liked the singles, but it sounded like more Meshuggah, and I know we talked similarly about Animals as Leaders, and it's like the stuff they put out, it's more of their sound, and I was like hoping that I didn't feel this way, but I was wondering if when the album came out, they'd be like, yeah, it's just more Meshuggah, but it's more like it's more Meshuggah.
right, right, right.
It's excited, and I mean the album just starts off heavy and it doesn't stop, and if anything, it gets heavier as it goes.
You just get
It's
that constant stank face
yeah,
going. Yeah.
yeah, it's definitely stank face inducing for sure, and it's
Listener discretion is advised. Um, but yeah, again, it's consistent. It's great. Even though it's more Meshuggah, Meshuggah is awesome, and we've said the same thing about Animals as Leaders. Whether or not it would stand out, that was the thing that we were kind of stating with Animals as Leaders. Same thing
yeah.
for Meshuggah. Whether or not it'll still stand out, and it did. So that's definitely cool, and might as well switch gears here to the Animals as Leaders record because that also dropped. So it's called what, Parisia, I believe.
Yeah, I think that's how you pronounce it.
And
That's the downfall of prog music is you can't pronounce half the songs and
right,
albums.
right. It exceeded my expectations. It really did. I had been talking on multiple episodes here leading up to this one that, all Animals as Leaders, the singles that they put out, I was like, it's just more, more of the same. Tosin is amazing. Javier is amazing. Matt's amazing. They're all amazing musicians. So like, obviously they're going to drop great music, but is it going to stand out? And there are at least 3 tracks on this record that stood out to me, and that's probably more than I expected, to be honest. Especially with the singles, they were great, but they weren't like I wouldn't have put them high up. But they released a song called "Red Miso" on
Yeah.
this record that I was vibing with from the beginning. Conflict Cartography is the opening track as well, and that was another one that sort of like got my interest. So between those 2 tracks, that was enough for me to be like, okay, this stands out to me. This isn't just, more thumping and more whatever. I mean, obviously there's that. It's Tosin. He's got like this weird thumb situation going on that he just, but it really stood out. They have like Meshuggah style breakdowns in some of these songs, which they've done. It's not like this is new for Animals as Leaders to do breakdowns, but the way they transitioned into it was kind of different than normal.
Yeah, I listening to Red Miso is the one that like comes to mind. Is it just like it changes up and you're like, whoa, what is this?
Yeah,
And then it
they're
does it again and you're like, wait, this is all still the same song? What is happening? And I mean, it's not an overly long song. Like, I mean, it comes in at like 4.5 minutes. So it's, in the world of prog, that's like short,
right.
but it somehow has it like, if you weren't looking at the track list, you could be convinced that like there were 3 separate short songs.
Yeah, yeah,
And
absolutely.
but
Um,
it's awesome. Yeah, I'm pleasantly surprised too with it. I
yeah,
was
there were times where the instrumentals gave me, and this is kind of a weird comparison, I guess, but like P2 Periphery vibes at times. I don't know why on that song. And then transition to like their Weightless record. Like it reminded me of some of the stuff on that, some of the like softer transition-y stuff. Like songs like New Eden and stuff like that off of that record. I got some of those vibes, and then just Meshuggah breakdowns stuff that was different but not different for them. But all combined in like a short period of time. It was kind of cool to just go on that journey of trying to figure out what it's, obviously it sounds like Animals as Leaders, but what else am I picking up from this that like makes it stand out, because it did stand out to me.
Yeah, I think that was my concern with the album is just, we've talked numerous times about how Animals as Leaders is like they're just music geniuses, but because they've set the bar so high, it's just like, what else can they do? And I'm surprised to see that like they did come out and while it still does sound like more Animals as Leaders, they did throw some curveballs in there and change it up and like you said, have a little bit of that periphery sound, some Meshuggah mix in that it kind of does change it up enough that it makes it feel fresh, not just like, oh, it's more Animals as Leaders. So yeah, I went in like kind of cautiously
Right.
optimistic, I guess, and then was still like pleasantly surprised. It's definitely up there on my list. I don't know that it'll stand at album of the year for me, but
No.
as of now, it's probably top three. It's definitely top five.
Yeah. I struggle to see it falling out of my top 10.
Yeah,
Um, but I don't see it finishing in my top 5. But that's still like, there before it was released, just listening to the singles, I was curious whether or not it would even make my top 10. After hearing it, I'm pretty confident that it will. And definitely some of those songs, Red Miso in particular, I'm gonna just keep dropping that. So if you're gonna listen to one song, listen to that one. But that's the one that I think will be on my like best tracks of the year type playlist that I put together every year. So
yeah. I'm wondering if for me, because like I thought the singles they put out are probably some of the like weaker songs on the album, and maybe it's just because those ones sound like more Animals as Leaders, but then like Red Miso sounding different and doing its own thing is like that's the thing for me that track stuck out because of that. So maybe they put those singles out thinking like, oh, these are the safer ones that like fans of our music will like, and that's why you and I kind of both had that like mentality, and then hearing Red Miso being like, oh, okay, this is pretty good.
yeah, I do agree. I think that the singles they put out are some of, not that any of the tracks are weak in my opinion,
Yeah,
because they
yeah.
can't be, but
Relatively speaking.
but yeah, I honestly do think that some of the singles, were some of the weaker tracks on this record. So, relatively.
Yeah.
So
Always got to add that caveat. I mean, anything with Tosin in it and
oh yeah,
Javier, like,
yeah. And
just,
Matt gets busy on the drums in this record. I mean,
yeah.
he really stood out. That's what really stood out to me, honestly. Normally you're just so focused on Tosin and Javier being just world class musicians that you kind of forget that their drummer is freaking amazing too. So I think that really stood out on this record
Yeah.
for me personally, at least. But check it out. Definitely come up with your own opinions, and uh,
Yeah.
yeah, I'd be
Comment and let us
curious because
know
I
what you
know a
think.
lot of musicians that I respect greatly too are already like album of the year for this, which is, I mean, it's very good. It's very good.
I can
So
see why people would
yeah,
put it there. It just, for me, it is kind of like I feel like I have that bias. It's like, oh, well, it's more Animals as Leaders. It's like we expect them to do well. And I know that's like not fair holding them up on that higher standard, but that's
yeah,
just, I guess that's the blessing and the curse of being Tosin and being a guitar god.
absolutely. So, anyways, I think that's the last album we wanted to discuss.
You have the major ones anyway.
Yeah, so let's switch over to tour announcements. So we'll start with a couple festivals. One that I'm real salty about, and I'll explain that when we get to it. But we'll start with the Blue Ridge Rock Festival. Some of that lineup's been released, or probably all of it, but some of the highlights. Uh, so Whitechapel, that's a band that was kind of big for us in high school, at least
Yeah.
me in particular. I listened to a lot, Somatic Defilement, and what's the other one that came right after that? I'm not big. I don't
This is
remember.
Exile?
Yes, This Is
Yeah.
Exile. Thank you. Those two records were pretty big for me back in my deathcore phase.
Yeah, I've kind of fallen off of them with their newest album, Kin. I wasn't a huge fan of what I listened to. But their earlier albums were, pretty big for our high school
Yeah.
phase. I was just surprised. Like, I expected with calling it, Blue Ridge Rock Festival, I expected to be more like Southern rock, like
Yeah,
a.
I mean, I know, like rock bands, like I'm pretty sure Coheed has played Blue Ridge Rock Festival. I'm
Oh,
pretty sure,
really?
yeah, I know they get, but that again, bands on this list, Knocked Loose, Straight from the Path, like hardcore bands, Zao, Siamese, which is not really, I could see Siamese on that tour for Fit for a King. These are all heavier bands that you wouldn't necessarily think you would see on a rock festival bill.
Yeah, that's why
Um,
I was surprised. Like, I was scrolling through the list and was like, "There's no way." Like, Nita Strauss is on there too.
right,
That
yeah,
she's gonna be there, which I'm not surprised. Like, it seemed like she would fit in that bill.
for sure. Doesn't
Um,
she play guitar, or did she play guitar for um Alice Cooper for some reason? For
yeah,
some
yeah, I think she did. I
Yeah.
think that's where she started, and then she
Yeah.
kind of like transcended
Yeah, she's
and
real
started
good.
doing her own thing.
She's
Yeah,
impressive,
she got her own like signature line of
which is cool.
guitars and stuff.
But yeah, that's definitely a heavier lineup than I've seen in the past for that festival. So that's definitely interesting to see that that's kind of branching out like that. I mean, Whitechapel's Kin record does kind of lend them to be able to play less heavy festivals, but then you look at bands like Knocked Loose and Straight from the Path, and it's like, no, there's no rules. So
Yeah, they just do it. They're doing whatever they want out there.
right,
And like Zao or Zao, I'm not sure exactly
yeah,
how to pronounce it. Like their vocals, it just sounds like some like reptile serpent monster is their singer. Like from his vocals, is just absurd. Like they're real heavy too, and
yeah,
um, yeah, seeing them on there, like like you said about Siamese, I could see them playing on there too. But also, like as much as they are like softer, like prog rock, I also feel like I don't know, the style of music doesn't quite fit as much with them. So I was like surprised in a
yeah,
way too
for
to see them
sure,
on there. So yeah, I thought it was an interesting
yeah,
music festival that I was like, I kind of would enjoy to
yeah.
go to this.
Yeah, and there's so Zao, however it's pronounced. We don't have this on the list, but I'm going to say it anyways because I don't remember if I said this on a previous episode. But they're touring with Darkest Hour.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I don't know if you mentioned that they were touring with them,
yeah.
but yeah, they're
So Darkest Hour is touring Deliver Us in its entirety, which is my favorite Darkest Hour record. I'm pretty sure I talked about this on another episode, but I didn't see it in my notes, so I'm saying it here now. Darkest Hour is touring Deliver Us in its entirety. That is their best record. If you've never listened to it, go listen to it. Super pumped for that tour. Already bought my tickets. I wish I had enough friends that I could have, because at this venue, it's like if you have 8 friends, you get a whole table. So I was like, oh, that'd be great. Being old, I like to sit sometimes at concerts. I don't know if I would want to be sitting at this show though. I'm really excited to see that. So yeah, one of my favorite records of all time. So really excited to see them tour that.
yeah, that would be pretty
And
sweet.
Zao or Zayao or however it's pronounced is opening for them. So just wanted to throw that in there while we were talking about them.
Yeah.
But to switch gears to the festival that I'm salty about,
I was gonna
uh,
say, I was like, which
I'll
one of these are you
explain. I'll
salty for?
explain. So Arctangent is a reoccurring festival that happens in Europe, and it always gets the most amazing progressive bands. Like this year, it's Opeth, it's Tesseract, Leprous, Intervals, Covet, Delta Sleep, Rivers of Nile, like Thank You Scientist, Intronaut, like all these major amazing bands. Why can't we have something like that in the United States?
Yeah.
Why does this not exist? We have this prog fest that happens once a year in like Atlanta or whatever, but it never gets bands like this. There's like maybe one or two, if that, and everything else is bands you've never heard of, which is fine. I love discovering new bands, but come on, just give us one, because there's so many other ones too. What's the like? I don't like Radar is another one. I think
Yeah,
Radar
Radar
Festival.
Festival.
There's
Yeah.
just so many amazing progressive metal, progressive rock, progressive music in general festivals that happen over in like Europe and the UK and stuff like that. I just want one.
Yeah, just
Just
one.
one.
Well, it's weird because like half of those bands you listed are from the US too.
Right.
So it's like, and I mean, this isn't even half of the bands that are performing at
Yeah, no, the
Arctangent. These are
list
just
is
some of the
huge.
big ones. But yeah, it's just like it is strange that we don't get
Just
something like
one.
that in the US. But It's a bucket list thing for me for sure to go to
I would
Arctangent.
love it. I would love it. But that's why I'm salty, not because the tour makes me salty. It's that we don't have that luxury here.
That's why I was confused when you said you're salty, and I was like, "Why are you mad about this?"
I wanted there to be some, suspense. I
Yeah,
wanted,
you definitely kept me in suspense there. I was like waiting for the story because
yeah,
it's like there
but
is nothing bad about
no,
Arctangent.
that's so amazing. But yeah, so for everybody that's listening from the UK, I'm jealous of you guys for having such awesome prog
And if
festivals.
anyone wants to pay for us to
Yeah,
come,
fly us out.
we
But
would be
no.
happy to attend.
But yeah, so that's so awesome. One of these years we'll get out there. But
Yeah, definitely a
um
bucket list thing for me
yeah.
for sure.
So the next tour was just recently announced, US tour. Northlane bringing Silent Planet and Avoid out on the road in the US. I don't know the last time Northlane's toured the US. It's definitely been a while. Clearly with COVID, it's been a while for a lot of these bands touring in general, but
Yeah,
Northlane being from Australia, I think it was actually pretty, even before COVID, it's been a while. So I could be wrong on that, but I've definitely not seen them, I don't think, on a bill in a while. So that's going to be cool. Silent Planet being one of my favorite bands. Northlane being a band that I used to really enjoy. I like some of their new stuff. So that would be cool. And Avoid is very cool as well. So
I've actually never listened to Avoid. I'm aware of them, but I don't think I've ever heard anything by them. So this would be a show that like I'd be going for Silent Planet, and then I'd also enjoy North Lane because I listen to them, and there are definitely songs by them that I like, but Silent Planet would be like the reason I'm going, and kind of maybe discover some of
yeah,
Avoid's music. So this would be an interesting tour to get like a good experience out of like,
yeah.
oh, a band that I've kind of discovered through this tour
Well,
and stuff.
as old people here, if we order tickets early enough, the venue that they're playing at does have VIP seating. So, and I'm pretty sure we can also eat there too. Look at that.
All
spoken like
about eating and sitting.
spoken like a true metalhead, right? But no, I that's Silent Planet's so awesome. I love being like up close and personal to the stage whenever they're playing, and
Yeah, I
uh
don't think I could sit for Silent Planet.
no,
Maybe for North Lane, I could
yeah.
maybe sit and eat some chicken tenders, but
But yeah, that's one that I definitely want to get tickets for and check out. So hopefully we can make that happen. Right now, the only shows we have tickets for, at least me personally, the Darkest Hour show, I bought those immediately. Obviously, I
yeah,
hyped that up. And then Coheed with Dance Gavin Dance. Hopefully that still happens with what happened with Dance Gavin Dance's camp. Um, but yeah, that's all we have upcoming right now. So.
yeah,
But anyways, switching gears, Animals as Leaders, talked about them a little bit. Obviously, with their new record, they are touring in support of that with Intervals, which two fantastic instrumental bands right there. If you're into just guitar wizardry, that's a solid tour.
yeah. That's I didn't see this actually, but
Yeah, I think they're on the road right now. Like I think this is happening right
oh
now.
really?
Yeah, so
Did
I
it?
don't think they're coming to us personally,
Oh,
but
maybe that's why I didn't see it then. Because like if
yeah.
it's not in like the Pittsburgh area or within like an hour or two drive,
Yeah.
I'm just like,
Yeah, I
I don't
think they
know.
played Philly and maybe Harrisburg since that's been a thing.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of tours are coming through and they're just hitting like double like mid to east
Yeah,
PA
which is unfortunate, but
and skipping us over here in the Pittsburgh area.
yeah, but that's it's definitely worth mentioning because those are two monsters in instrumental prog, and if they're coming through your city or somewhere near you, definitely check that out. Especially with how much how well the new Animals as Leaders record turned out, in my opinion, and I'm sure others. So
Yeah.
definitely worth checking out. And obviously, Aaron Marshall always puts on a solid show. So that whole crew.
Yeah. Their their most recent album is just got so many good songs on it.
Yeah,
Like it's
Circadian.
yeah.
Yeah,
It's
so good.
just so many jams, and I mean they've got the tour that they came in like December out this way. Like they played a good mix of
Yeah,
stuff, and I feel like if they keep a similar set list, that'll be a really fun show with Animals as Leaders, new stuff, and
Yeah, we talked about that a little bit earlier. We went and saw them with Crypto Dira and Thank You Scientist. That was a really cool show. We posted a video, at least one video of that show on our social media.
at least the one with the saxophone.
Yeah, I was gonna say because the sax player from Thank You Scientist came out and played on Dose, which is one of my favorite tracks off of
That
Circadian.
is a really
So
awesome track.
um,
That was really fun to watch.
yeah,
Like
and
having that.
that's the thing with intervals too. They just always looks like those guys are having such a great time up there.
Yeah.
It makes me wish that was my life a little bit at times. Some bands come out, they do what they need to do, they leave. Polyphia comes to mind, but yeah, intervals and Air Marshal, those guys they look like they're genuinely enjoying their life up there. So
Yeah.
it makes for an enjoyable experience from the people watching as well. So
Yeah, there's definitely like the energy of the performers gives to the energy of the audience, and if they're having fun and having a good time, then like everyone else seems to as well.
yeah, absolutely. Well, I think that's everything we wanted to talk about. We can talk about a little bit of what's next for us here. We do have another episode coming out here shortly. It might come out before this, it might come out after this. We have to talk about that, but where we review the Delta Sleep show that we went to, which was really cool. We have a episode that is in the works called Hidden Gems, where we're going to talk about some bands that we think deserve a little bit more recognition. We're going to do some artist spotlight episodes too, where we're just going to talk about a band for however long we talk about a band.
Yeah, just kind of go through their discography and maybe even like rank their albums.
Yeah, at least talk about each record and how, what they mean to us, whatever favorite songs. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it'll probably be mostly like prolific prog bands that like
Yeah.
anyone listening to this podcast would know. That like they won't be like deep cuts most likely.
Yeah, and depending on too if we have any, we can maybe get some fan input too on who we should talk about as well. I mean, I think like you said, the first couple will definitely be like prolific bands between the Buried to Me, Coheed and Cambria, Contortionist, Tesseract, bands that people have heard of. That their discography is very well known. But I wouldn't hate, having somebody throw out a band that I barely listened to and then have, like what I had to do, what I did with, not had to do, what,
What you made yourself do.
what I did with Dance Gavin Dance, like it'd be cool to be.
Yeah, honestly, like I'd be cool with that. Like if we
Yeah.
had people to like comment, give us feedback, and like suggest a band for us to do something like that
Yeah.
with, like give them a listen through on their discography, maybe like rank their albums, or at least like discuss what we thought about each one, kind of talk about them and stuff. I feel like that would be kind of an interesting project
Yeah, I
for
wouldn't
us,
even,
and then cool to interact with listeners too. So
for sure. I wouldn't even put a limit on genre. Give us whatever, Don't get too crazy, but but I think that's a cool idea, something we can maybe throw out on social media at some point. We'll get through the first couple first and just see how it goes.
yeah, see what the
But
responses.
yeah, but I think that's a cool idea. And obviously we talked about, we have a couple shows coming up. We'll do concert review episodes for that. The Coheed episode, or the Coheed show, we'll do an episode for. The Darkest Hour episode we'll do an episode for. And whatever other shows we end up attending will be cool. And something else, once the Coheed record drops, I think we're gonna do a giveaway. It's gonna be something Coheed related. I don't know yet. I have a lot of Coheed stuff signed by Claudio, other members of the band. So it's gonna be something cool for sure. So keep an eye out for that as well. And yeah, that's kind of all I can think about.
Yeah. I think pretty much covered
Yeah,
everything. Got most of
so-
the major news. That's
So definitely follow us on our social media if you don't already. On Instagram, just look up Progressive Gentleman. Twitter, we are Prog Gent Pod. And if you're listening to this right now, you like what you hear, we'd love a good rating. It gets us a little bit more exposure, and
it definitely helps get us on some charts and get us a little more exposure in the different platforms of choice. So
for sure,
please
for sure.
please take the time to rate if you
Yeah,
if you could.
if you deem us worthy, we appreciate
We're
it.
not
And
worthy.
but yeah, thanks again for listening to us talk, and we look forward to talking to you guys again soon. Thanks again.
Thanks.